All right. We are back again with another episode of Light Skin 22, maybe getting up there. But we are here with. Want to introduce yourself?
Pete Johnson, candidate running for the Minnesota House here in District 8A.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being with us.
You bet.
And like always, let's start at the beginning, man. Tell us about childhood, where you were born, all that.
Born in Two Harbors, back when rural hospitals were still birthing kids.
Yep.
Grew up there. We were out in the sticks a bit. My mom was a nurse in town there.
Okay.
My dad was a Vietnam vet and was building our house as he was using the GI Bill to go back to school. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, he got some education and worked at Miller Dwan as a biomed tech for a long time. Mm-hmm. But we lived about 15 miles outside of town. Okay. They found some property. They carved out a little homestead up there. We didn't have a whole lot growing up, including things like running water and electricity until I got a little bit older in life. I think we got indoor plumbing and running water when I was around 6 or 7, and then electricity when I was probably about 9. Mm-hmm. So if my brother and I wanted to, watch cartoons on Saturday morning, it meant, getting a car battery and hooking up some alligator clips and watching a little 9-inch black and white TV until the battery went dead and the screen shrunk down to nothing. But grew up there. We had, both my parents were working by that point. So when we were old enough not to need babysitters, which was probably a little bit younger than it is today, we were kind of cut loose on our own and spent a lot of time running around in the woods up there and figuring out how to cause trouble and build tree forts. And it's amazing we didn't end up in the hospital probably more than we should have. But
I get that.
Yeah, so then went to Two Harbors, graduated from Two Harbors High School in 1997, played football there.
Mm-hmm. What position?
I was a defensive back and a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm. When your brother, is he older or younger?
2.5 years older.
Okay.
And then I got a sister who's about 6 years younger.
Okay. What, I'll back up a little bit. Did you have a lot of friends close by, or y'all being outside of town? Just
our closest neighbors were about 2 miles away.
Okay.
So not a ton of friends in the neighborhood, if you will.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to go, a couple friends down the road, it was at least a 2-mile bike ride before you caught up with them. Yep. And then, my first job was actually at Superior Shores, bussing tables at the restaurant there. Mm-hmm. I think I was 15 when I got hired there, so there was a lot of times where I'd ride my bike in, work my shift, and then usually catch a ride home with my mom or dad when they got done with work and were coming back through. So
yeah, for sure. Now, when you were growing up, did you always think about kind of you wanted to move away, or did you always think, hey, I want to stay in this area, or what was kind of your thoughts?
It was definitely move away, right? We vacationed out west. Colorado, Montana, Wyoming a couple times when I was little. Absolutely loved it out there.
Yep.
So that was my trajectory. I was like, I want to be out Colorado. For some reason, I said on there I liked their football team back in the day.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, that's where I wanted to be. And after college, I ended up getting hired for a fire department outside of Denver.
Okay.
I was out there for about 3.5 years before coming back, and it's funny, that draw to come back after you've been gone is pretty strong.
Now, did you go to college in Colorado?
I went to my undergrad's from St. Cloud State.
Okay, all right. Yep. So what did you study there?
Physical education, sports science.
Okay,
athletic training, if you will.
Yeah.
Taping ankles and icing shoulders and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
I got about 3/4 of the way through and realized that I did not want to do that for the rest of my life. And
what point got you there to say, all right, I don't feel like
the first. You had to get, in order to be a certified athletic trainer, you needed 1,000 hours or something in the training room. And I think I put in 2. And
2 hours?
2 hours. And I'm like, I'm
done.
This.
I'm sick of feet, ankles.
I was like, this is not for me. I can't do this for the rest of my life. And at that point, I was actually, thankfully, that degree, it was one of the only ones that anybody knew of that required you to become an EMT.
Okay. Yeah.
Most of them, it was just, become a first responder or get this other EMS or, certificate. But EMT was a much more advanced certificate for that type of stuff. And this program required it. And in the process of getting that, after I got it, part of my clinicals were in the emergency room in St. Cloud. Okay. And one of the folks I was, following around on a clinical said they hire EMTs.
Okay.
This was in the 99, 2000 era. and they paid like $10 an hour, which back in the day that was a big
got
chunk of change, you know.
Yeah.
I was waiting tables, I think, at Red Lobster at the point, making $4.50, and $10 an hour sounded pretty dang good.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting hired there. So my senior year of college, I was working nights and weekends, and and I loved it. It definitely, that's what really clicked. And at that point, I was going to finish out my degree, but then looking at going back to school for something else, whether it be nursing, whether it be a paramedic, whether it be something in the medical field.
Yep.
And my older brother's a firefighter.
Okay. Yep. And was he a firefighter in Duluth at the time?
He retired from Duluth. I think at that point he was up in Fairbanks, Alaska.
Oh, cool. That's cool.
And he's like, well, if you like the EMS side of it, he's like, you'll really like the fire side of it.
Okay.
And so he kind of steered me in that direction, and ended up taking that test for a department outside of Denver with their minimum requirements where you had to be an EMT and graduate from high school.
Okay.
And I was like, I checked both those boxes.
Yep.
And tested for them out there and ended up getting hired, and they put us through what ended up being about a 13-week academy to get all your fire training, and then went out on the rigs, and then was on the rigs I think for about 6 months, and then they put us through, or put you through paramedic school. And so it was a pretty good experience. I got pretty lucky getting into that department when I did, and everything else. So
yeah, awesome. All right, so now you back in Duluth at this point. Yep. All right, so what was it like being back home? Like, what did you have? Were your parents still here?
Yep.
And how about your sister?
So my parents still live in the house my dad built when we were little.
Oh, really?
Northeast of Sioux Harbor.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So
awesome.
they're still living out there in the sticks. They kicked the idea around of coming back, like coming closer to Duluth or coming into town a little bit more, because it's getting more. It's harder and harder to maintain all that up there, and they're both in their mid-70s.
Yeah.
So they're still there. My older brother was at the Duluth Fire Department for I think about 5 years by the time I came back. And then my little sister, she went to college out east, and then lived in New York for a while.
Cool, okay.
And now she's out in San Francisco. She's a nurse practitioner for the VA out there.
Cool, okay.
In 2005 I moved back here, and started with the Duluth Fire Department, and have been here ever since. Kind of went through captain now. I'm bouncing around from station to station, what we call the pool.
Yeah.
And then I also my older brother, when I got back, he was the treasurer for the firefighters union. So he kind of kept me involved with that stuff too. And ultimately I've been on our executive board of the union for about 16 years as well.
Awesome. Well, apart from fighting fires, what is the draw for you of being a firefighter?
Sure. Fighting fires is becoming a smaller and a smaller percentage of what we do, and it's not, the fires are staying roughly the same, but it's all the other things that get added on. One of the best things about being a firefighter, and you'll hear this with any retirees that come back to the station for a cup of coffee, is they don't necessarily miss the calls, but they miss the people. And you see the fire department truly, you hear it talked about being a family, and the brother and sister, gets tossed around a lot, and it truly is. Like you spend a third of your life with those folks. Like you live with them. You go through some really good times. You go through some really bad times. And just like family, like you have your ups and downs. And that's probably the best part. It's just that that camaraderie of working together and responding together and ultimately getting to do some pretty amazing things. Yeah. But
one of my good friends out in he's from Rochester, New York. And his dad was, I think he made it the chief. And he had been doing it for, I don't know, maybe 40-something years.
Wow.
And I remember talking to him, I was like, what is the draw? He said, to be honest, I love when we just all hanging out, in the building. He said, the stuff that we do, you never think about. He said, and there's days that feel like we're in a college house. But then there's some days that's tough because you become so close that they know how to push your buttons, And but he just recently retired, and I just talked to him the other day, and he was just saying, "Man, I miss it." He said, and he said, "I don't miss the calls," but he said, "I just want to go in there and hang out with the guys again." Just chill. So that is cool.
Some of the most fun you'll have is sitting around the coffee table or dinner table and busting somebody's chops.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so at what point did you want to get into politics? How did that all start for you?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I can blame my brother for a lot of this. Okay. When I moved back in 2005, it was when the firefighters union had first started realizing that if we wanted to, the best way to protect, our staffing and protect our members was to be involved, because ultimately, we have this talk, and you talk to a new firefighter and be like, well, are you into politics? Well, no, I'm not into politics. I don't like politics. Well, politics is into you. When we're a government entity that is funded by taxpayer dollars, that is managed by elected officials and appointed officials, or elected officials who appoint fire chiefs and things like that, it is a very political job. Everything that we do is political. Every fire truck we buy is voted on by the council. Every contract we settle is voted on by everything is political, or it can be political. And realize that if we had candidates that supported the fire service, it made our lives a lot easier and our ability to do our jobs a lot easier. So in the 2003 to 2005 is really when the firefighters union started getting involved in politics. So when I moved home, I was kind of voluntold, like, we're going to go knock on doors for, I think it was Greg Gilbert at the time. He was running for, I think he was running for city council in 05, and then he ended up running for mayor in 07. But so we got involved in, working on campaigns and realizing the difference that you can make just with, a handful of folks going out knocking on doors and talking about why, why they support candidate X and, that type of thing. And, started doing more and more of that, and then was fortunate to go to some training that our international union puts on, high-level candidate or campaign training, and came back from that all jazzed up, ready to go, and ended up working and running a few different campaigns, and realized that some of the most effective, best politicians, if you will, are just normal folks who are trying to do a good job. So then kind of stayed active, involved in politics ever since. And with when Liz decided not to run for re-election, saw an opening, and ultimately threw my hat in.
For sure. Now, why that specific position?
Sure. Being a city employee, there's some rules about us being able to run and serve on the city council or things like that. Timing was a big issue to it as well. As far as right now my daughters are going to be 12 and 14. My wife's an elementary school teacher, so like that timing worked out really well at the point that we are in our lives. And then with the state, a lot of the things that I've worked on over the years I really care about, whether it be workers' rights, whether it be housing issues, education. The state plays a huge role in that, and so being able to actually go down there and try and use my stories and my influence to try and move some things there. I think I have a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of the things you're looking to kind of either tackle or be a part of, learn more about? Things like that?
A lot of what's driving me is the work that I've done as a firefighter and the work that I've done as a union officer. And realizing, when I got hired in 05, fire department was running between 5,000 and 6,000 calls a year. This year, we're probably going to be close to or over 16,000 calls. And
just for Duluth?
Yeah. Just for the fire department.
God dang.
Yeah.
How many firefighters you got?
It depends on the day, but about 130, 132.
Why the increase in numbers? Is it because it's like less police officers or
drugs?
It's a lot of things, and that's the things that I hope to be able to focus on is the four. If I was to lump it into four major categories that are the overarching problems, housing is a huge one, education, a good job, and access to healthcare that they can actually use. Those things, most of the calls that we're going to have roots that go back to one of those. If you don't have access to healthcare, you can afford one of two things happens. You either wait until you are so sick that you think you're going to die, and
I do that.
And then you're like, I don't care if I get a $20,000 bill, I'm going to die anyway, or I'm so at that point of like just scared and don't know what else to do. So that's when we'll get some calls, and then we'll get other calls where we end up becoming the primary care for somebody because they can't call and make an appointment because they don't have insurance or they don't have the ability to do it or they have to pay on the front end. They know if they call 911 and this is something everybody is taught from a very, very young age. If they call 911, somebody is going to show up and help. And it's going to either be us or the police. Yep. And if it's not a direct related police call, because they've got plenty of those, then it's us. And we can't solve those problems in that just short snapshot that we have. So realizing that, you know, we become that, in essence, primary care, you know, for lack of a better term, where they got a, you know, infection on their thumb, they're calling us. They've got, you know, a stomach ache, they're calling us. The things that, you know, if I had that happen, I'd call my doctor and be like, hey, I got an infection on my thumb. And I'm just going to, you know, send me a picture of it, or I'll, you know, send you in a script for some antibiotics, or, you know, come in, I'll take a peek at it. Like, they don't have that luxury.
Let's say, I got two questions. One, at what point, and whose decision is it? Say I call 911 because I slipped, fell, broke my leg. And in my mind, and this is me learning as I'm asking you, when I dial 911, at what point do they decide I'm going to call the EMTs or I'm going to send out the fire department?
Sure.
Like, how does that decision?
We go to every medical call.
Okay.
Yep, because, and then Mayo Clinic Ambulance is the ambulance provider locally here in the region. And in the city of Duluth, you have 8 fire stations, 10 different fire trucks. And it depends on the time and the day, but usually there's 4 ambulances, give or take, depending on if they're on transports out of town. You know, so the odds of an like a lot of times, if you're not in the core, kind of this core of the city, like if you had a medical out here, your response is going to be Station 10 down there in Gary. They're going to, even if there's an ambulance in service at 40th West, they're going to get here 5 to 10 minutes before them. Now, if it's busier and that ambulance is coming from Hawthorne, Wisconsin, it's delayed even longer. So we respond to every medical call to kind of start care, you know, and if it's a critical medical call, like a, you know, heart attack or difficulty breathing or something like that, we have some tools to start fixing that, or an overdose.
For sure,
Narcan, those types of things. So we respond to every medical call.
See, and that's what I didn't know, and that was just an ignorant thing on my part, and maybe a lot of people don't know, because I always thought that it's fires, obviously, or if there is a chance of it being a fire, like say a car accident where gas is leaking, and I've seen, I saw the Jaws of Life get used once back in New Jersey, you know, so things like that. So I didn't know like every call you respond to. That's interesting.
So we respond to everything from any type of fire to an automatic alarm, like where, you know, somebody burns toast or the dust gets in the detector and it sounds. We send rigs to that. Any type of car accidents, you know, unless they get called in as just a fender bender, nobody injured. But if they don't know, we respond until somebody knows.
For sure.
We have multiple rigs that carry extrication equipment for those types of things. We go to any and every medical call you can think of. If right now the CO alarm started sounding in your house and you didn't know why, we're the ones who respond.
For sure.
If, you know, and then it's everything in between. Like I drove by such and such address and there was a funny smell. It smelled like gas. We respond to that and check it out. You know, we are kind of that catch-all. If it doesn't come in and it can't be, you know, directly a law enforcement response, then we're kind of we'll go check it out.
For sure.
We do, you know, if somebody falls and can't get up, we're the lift assist providers. And and that's like, you know, we have those core emergencies, but a lot of the calls that we're going to are outside of that.
For sure. Now I'm gonna go political. Okay. You mentioned healthcare. A lot of people not having healthcare, but so on the side that I work in, on the community side, I know like we get a lot of people who come to us without healthcare, and we get people signed up, and it's easy. Now, when you're in office, is the education piece of that something you want to focus on too? Of like showing people, hey, there are services here that just aren't being taken advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, we want to make sure that people are getting the services that they're supposed to be getting. The other thing that we need to start looking at is expanding that out so more people are eligible, or people don't get kicked off for silly things, like having discussions, you know, with folks who are getting aid from the county for, you know, kids with health issues. and because of some paperwork got filed incorrectly, all of a sudden they lose all their care, and which is catastrophic for those folks.
Sure. Yep.
So figuring out how we stop things like that from happening and expand it out so that more people are eligible. The health insurance side of it, you look at the city of Duluth. With the union stuff, I've been very active in shaping what our health insurance looks like and protecting it for the members that are eligible for
sure.
And it's expensive.
Yeah,
right? It is one of the most expensive benefits that is our members have. We know that it makes it harder for the city to do other things they'd like to do because there's that benefit there. And the city's not alone. Private businesses that provide health insurance coverage for their employees, that happens, and that's where if we start expanding out and you truly look at like a Minnesota health plan, less of that responsibility falls on the employers. More people become eligible. It becomes much easier to use. It's portable between employer. If I stopped working for the city and I went and started working for somewhere else, that comes with you. Your health insurance isn't solely tied to your job, which is another thing that we see where folks lose their job and all of a sudden their whole family loses healthcare coverage, and then something else happens and now all of a sudden they're in bankruptcy because they've got tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical debt.
Yeah, for sure. That question comes from like I said, we have a lot of people who come to us for a lot of the issues that you even mentioned, just on a smaller scale, individuals that need healthcare or housing or educational needs, which is huge, and a lot of people, sometimes the first thing people say, well, there's nothing out here. And it's like, okay, stop, number one, because there is, and it's more of like being able to educate people on what is available and how to access those services. Because if we talk about it the way that the people who need help talk about it, you will think like, okay, we ain't got nothing here. Especially when it comes to housing. There's so many new affordable housing units getting built around here that I just think the general public don't know about. Different projects that's up and probably gonna be ready to go soon. And whether it's the partnership piece, of us working with other entities to get people service, or the educational piece, or whatever, just making people aware, of it. But also, like you said, finding ways to because some of these services, even though they are here, to access them take months. It's like, why in the hell does it take me 3 months to get somebody food stamps or to get somebody's even name just on a list? We ain't even talking about waiting for the house. Your name not even on this list for a couple months.
Well, and that's like I was on Center City Housing's board of directors for about 9 years, and we would get our monthly reports of our vacancy rates and things like that. And some buildings would have these higher vacancy rates, and we would ask the questions like, why are we not filling these units? And there's the coordinated entry system. So somebody gets on the list, okay, they're next up on the list, but to find them and get them in there is a struggle, because a lot of those folks they don't already have an address. That's why they're on the list to get housing from us. So that unit is being held for them, but the system to get them in is clunky and not efficient. And re-looking at how we do those types of things as well, so that if we have whether it's revamping or making sure that coordinated entry system is efficient as possible, so that as soon as that unit is ready, we can have it filled in short order versus sitting on it because you have to wait, post, and you have to try and find the person, and streamlining some of those processes and figuring out what that looks like, I think does exactly what you're talking about. And with that stuff, I'm a firm believer that housing is like that cornerstone piece, because if you don't have that, like I've had this conversation when I've been talking to folks on the door, if you don't have that piece, like if I lost my house and I've got 2 daughters and my wife and we don't have a place to stay, I'm not going to care about much else until I find that. Not going to care about my health. I'm not going to care about education. I'm not going to care about a job. Like, my immediate need is to get myself and my family somewhere safe and secure, and then I can reevaluate, okay, what's the next priority. But if you don't have that, I couldn't imagine trying to maintain a job without knowing where I'm going to sleep at night, or get an education. You know, my wife teaches third grade, and she sees that with a lot of the, you know, thankfully not a ton, but within the first week of school, she knows which kids aren't sleeping in the same bed every night, which kids are bouncing from, you know, family member to, you know, friend to sleeping in a car, and the struggle that those kids have because they're not caring about multiplication tables or their handwriting because they don't know where they're going that night.
And I get that. Like, we have a lot, and I do a lot of work in the school system as well, and you know, a lot of behavior issues we get called about. My first question is, who are you staying with, or where are you staying? And you realize, like, the behavior issues come from kids that either they don't have a stable place, or they just saying, "Oh, I'm staying with this friend this week, and the next week I'll be there." And it's like, it is just the idea of a safe space, even if the area isn't so safe, or you know what, just having four walls and a roof. Something as simple as that can change a lot, you know.
It absolutely does.
And I realized even yesterday I went out on a ride along with Dana, our new community officer, and we went and just looked at some of the homeless areas around. And, you know, stopped and talked with a couple people. And, you know, some people, they bring up, you know, I have the real conversation, which was like, look, I lost my house, you know, because of this situation. And some of it, this one person was saying, yeah, I had something happened with their stomach, their intestines, and they had to get a surgery, and they couldn't afford it. They didn't have health care. So they took out an extra loan on their house, lost the house, and then they said after that, I didn't care. That was their quote. Yeah. After that, I was like, dang. Then, like you said, now you're putting it all together. So how do we figure out not only getting someone in the house, but when we do, how can we correlate that with these other services that are needed the moment you get a house?
Yeah.
Because, you know, and because that's just the beginning.
That is true. That is, like, it's when we look at housing, especially that affordable housing where you're taking people who are, you know, homeless at the time and getting them somewhere. There's a reason, just like that example, like there's a reason that they ended up where they did. How do we address those underlying issues so that they don't just end up right back in there? And you see that, you know, with Center City's housing, some of the properties that we have supportive services on site, some of them don't. Those buildings that have supportive services look very, very different than the ones that don't.
Yeah, that follow-up is everything.
Yep.
It's everything, man.
And just having somebody there to, you know, if you, accessing that healthcare might be easy if you know the right steps to take.
Yep.
But if nobody's there to help you take those steps,
then you just in the house.
Then you're just like you're just basically being warehoused until you slip up, until something happens and you lose it, and then that cycle happens all over again. And so, you know, those supports look different depending on the populations you're trying to serve, right? If you're looking at families, those supports look different than if you're looking at individuals with mental health issues. And those housing options that have the support built in are going to be better for everybody. They're going to be better for those individuals. They're going to be better for the communities. They're going to be better for everybody else in those buildings. And it's figuring out how, when we are talking about affordable housing, we're not just counting the units. We're looking at the services that need to go into those units to give those folks every opportunity they can to be successful and be healthy.
Solutions, not band-aids. That's what I say all the time. Solutions. If we can find more solutions and throw away these band-aids, I think y'all wouldn't have 16,000 calls.
We wouldn't. And that's like, as I've talked to folks on the door, that's like my elevator pitch is, you know, every lot of the calls we're going are tied back to these things. If we can address some of those things on the front end, people are going to be healthier. They're going to be more successful. There's going to be less likelihood of them getting to that point of despair and calling me on the back end.
Yeah, for sure.
And if they do call me, give me the tools to at least get them right in the right direction, right? One of the issues that gets brought up a lot is mental health issues. And we respond on a ton of mental health calls. We don't have high-level training, and that is not our wheelhouse, right? We don't have those tools. Your house is on fire. We have the tools. We know the process. We know what we're doing. But if you're in an absolute mental health crisis, we know enough to kind of try and keep you as safe as possible until the ambulance gets there or whoever to get you somewhere else. But ultimately, a lot of those folks go to the ERs, and if they're not having an absolute crisis, the ERs don't have anywhere to get them the help that they need, and they're I mean, I don't know if you've tried to go to the ER at all recently, but it seems like every time I've gone there or, been there, it's hours before you can get back. Mm-hmm. Not, half an hour, doesn't matter how sick you are. Yeah. Like, they're overwhelmed as well. Mm-hmm. So what happens is that person gets, somewhat stable, and then they're like, okay, we can't do anything else for you right now, and they cut them loose.
Yep. Into the same situation of
2 days, 2 weeks later, we just do the same rodeo. Mm-hmm. Person has a crisis, somebody calls, we go, we kind of protect them in that snapshot. They go back to the ER, mm-hmm. they get pumped back out. Yep. So it's figuring out how we break that circle and get them into place, treated, and the help that they truly need.
And it's so interesting because you hear issues that people put up here, versus the issues that we deal with. And to be honest, it's the same. Like issues that we deal with youth, say some get put in either Milledrewan or they go to AJC, and you see the same kids go in and out. Mm-hmm. And the kids get locked up, and then you say, well, we don't want to hold them in jail, so we just want to release them. And I say, well, we didn't even come up with a plan yet mm-hmm. of what we are going to do once we let these youth go. Where are they going to stay? Are they going to go back into the same environment? Right. Or if they're struggling with drug use, are we going to get them CD treatment? If they got mental health issues, do we got therapy lined up? A lot of times we just don't want to hold them. If I'm being honest, this is the safest place for mm-hmm. them right now. And I hate to say that a detention center or a mental health unit is the safest space, but if they have nothing safe or stable to go back to, well, to be honest, this is our job. What I mean? So, and if you don't want to do it, then figure out an efficient way to get people the help that they need. So we aren't crowding emergency rooms, with issues that we can figure out and take care of, So
I'm excited about the Clarity projects. Yep. They've got the new mental health urgent care. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great start in the right direction, and having those mental health responders mm-hmm. That can either respond along with us mm-hmm. or in place of us for those types of calls, because that's their strength mm-hmm. and that's what they're trained to do. For sure. And then they can get to a facility that knows how to handle those things. But again, it's the urgent care is open during regular business mm-hmm. hours, extended business hours, but still call happens at 3:00 in the morning. Yep. What is our options then? Yeah, definitely. And that's where we need to start figuring out how we address some more of those things. Mm-hmm. I wish I had all the answers.
Trust me, look, I know you don't. I know I don't. There's a lot of things I sit there and just bang my head against the door mm-hmm. about. Like, look, I don't even know how to fix this. I'm gonna try. Yeah. But for now, y'all got to go at my pace until we get this figured out. Yeah. Why Pete Johnson?
I think if you look at my experience, I've been responding to folks mostly in this district for the last 19 years, thousands and thousands of calls, mm-hmm. every corner of the district, when people are at some of their absolute most vulnerable points, when they're scared, when they're desperate for somebody to help them. It's not the Facebook post, it's not the Instagram, mm-hmm. it is what people are really going through at that moment in time. Yep. And bringing that perspective and those stories to help educate folks who don't understand some of that and mm-hmm. wonder, well, why can't that person just do X? Yep. And being able to hopefully move the needle on some of those things. Mm-hmm. I got 2 daughters in middle school. I got a wife who's a public school teacher. Mm-hmm. That perspective and insight into our educational system, I think, is super important as well. To make sure that when we're setting aside money for education, if you will, it is truly getting down to those teachers and those students and that support staff mm-hmm. so that they are getting all the help that they can to be as successful as possible. Because those investments are the ones that are going to pay off huge in the back end. Yep. And then, the last thing that I think really kind of sets me apart is I've been a union officer for 16 years. Mm-hmm. You look at our membership, we have folks who are on the far right, we have folks that are on the far left, we have folks that are in the middle, we have folks that don't care. Mm-hmm. I'm that guy. Yeah, and I don't think that's true. But and it's working with people who don't necessarily always agree with you, and with that too, negotiating contracts. I've probably negotiated, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 contracts with the city, worked with other locals to settle and negotiate contracts in other communities. One of the biggest concerns that I've gotten on the doors as I've been out knocking this last month is that polarization, that refusal to work across any aisles or find any compromise.
Yep.
And I'll fully admit, I go into contract negotiations with a giant list of things that I want. I have yet to walk out of negotiations with that list looking very, very different than what I actually got.
Good.
But I still advocate as best I can for my members. There's things that I won't compromise on, but I will find the compromise on the things that I can and ultimately come to an agreement that everybody can live with. And taking that same mentality of how we figure these things out, how we create some of those relationships. I've worked with, different officials or over the years negotiating these things or on union issues where when we're fighting about an issue, it is, we're going toe to toe and throwing blows. And then as soon as that's over, you can put that stuff aside and then you can just have a regular conversation and realizing that just because somebody disagrees with you, you don't have to demonize them and hate them forever, right? There's going to be plenty of times where I disagree with folks on one issue and then have to find the issue that we can work on and turn around and work together on those issues.
For sure.
And I think that I want to bring that mentality with me and ultimately take all those experiences and kind of bundle them together and see if we can't move the needle on some of these things.
There we go.
And maybe you could share real quick, where is your district?
Yeah, District 8A roughly runs 9th, 10th Avenue East up to Kenwood.
Yep.
And then cuts just below Scholastica and then kind of runs everything south and west out to Gary.
Okay, cool.
Fond du Lac too? Or?
Nope, Fond du Lac's in 3B.
Okay.
Yep, Fond du Lac was in this district before they redistricted back in 2020, I think, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Learn your neighborhood, okay? That'd be a good thing to start there. So, if people want to find some more information on you, where can they do that?
Yeah, I've got all the social medias, which are all linked also to the website, which is www.votepete8a.com.
Okay.
And the slogan that I've got on all my T-shirts is "Vote for Pete's sake." So that hopefully folks remember.
I might need one of those shirts just because it's tough. Gotta get one.
We'll throw that on the screen.
Yeah, for sure.
Right on. Yeah. So anytime you reach out via social media, anytime you reach out on the website, it all just comes to my phone.
Awesome.
There's no handlers.
Blow him up.
Like that.
Blow it up.
So I'd love to have. I've been out on the doors for about the last month. I think I've knocked on. I think yesterday I broke over 2,000 doors. I got a couple 2,000 to 3,000 more I want to hit before August 13th, and been out there every day pounding the pavement. And ultimately, those conversations are the most valuable thing I can do. Is,
For sure.
Actually stand with somebody on their doorstep and listen to what they're concerned about, and use that as I go forward. So
for sure, awesome. Well, man, thanks for spending some time with us.
Yeah.
It's good to get a little snapshot of who you are too, just away from the professional setting and things, and then kind of just hear your heart for things. So it's going to be a good election, I think, this year, and get out and vote for wherever you want.
Primary is August 13th.
Be there. All right, be there. Peter be there, hanging out, chilling, maybe putting out a fire. Who knows? We'll figure it out.
I got that day off.
Well, good.
I work the next day.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thanks again, man, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you.
Yep.